All right, welcome to the first episode of Living Beyond the Shoreline, really brought to you by Wave Armor. And the intent of this is really to tell the stories of what it's like to really live on the water. Also share some of the Wave Armor products that make that possible. When we think about the audience for this content, really what we're trying to do is make sure that both dealers and customers are able to kind of access information about us wherever they are. And that was really the heart behind trying to build out a series. This is the first, like I mentioned. There's many more to come, and in that the additional series, and kind of what we're thinking here is really to kind of put the personalities behind the brand, the people and personalities, obviously the product, and then continue to introduce you guys to the team, some of the differentiators for our products that we're very proud of, but it's very difficult sometimes to display that through an ad, through some of our literature. So that's really kind of what the intent of this series is, and what we're trying to do. Again, we're open to suggestions. If you have any of those, please leave those comments in the bottom. As this is our first one, like, share, subscribe. All those things are going to help us, right? It seems, I've heard that many times, but to say it yourself the first time is pretty interesting. But please do that and share any comments you have down below, and that'll help guide us in the future. So with that said, I'll introduce myself. I'm Ben. I've been with Wave Armor about 2 years. And really, my passion for the boating, the power sports, the water is really what kind of drove me into pursuing a career here at Wave Armor. And it's, when I joined, I always have said this comment: I never want to work another day in my life. And that's kind of why I joined here. And sarcastically, I have worked a few. There's been a few of those days where that actually earned my keep, but for the most part, it truly is a passion. And I think you'll see that as we run through this series and we talk to people, within the organization, you'll see that that's kind of a shared interest. And that really is one of the key pieces, is really the people in the organization. And I'm a father of two. I got two young ladies. My wife and I are just working through that empty nesting phase. So we're starting to understand, or trying to figure out, how do we make our place the place where our kids want to come back to? And as they continue to look at their families, spend time on the water, and have those same memories that I've had and my wife has had when we were much younger. So, that's kind of what it is from my standpoint, and why Wave Armor is so critical, and really my path, and, kind of that success that we're having as a family to enjoy the water. Um, I've, this winter, I know ice, right? How do you install, Wave Armor on ice? We have a whole series. We'll talk about that. But this winter, I finally had my personal dock installed, and the family is super excited just to see how we can use that experience and really live beyond the shoreline this summer. So super excited for that. Enthusiast first. I don't know if you've picked up on that. Employee second. And I think that's a great combination, and speaks to really a lot of the people that are in the company. So with that, I'm going to introduce you to a gentleman I have with me today, Steve Schneider. He's one of our regional sales managers, and we kind of refer to him as the GOAT. Steve, do you want to kind of give a brief
Sure.
introduction of who you are and kind of what you do here?
So again, his name is Steve Schneider, and started with Rick 26 years ago now. I think April 1st. It's been 26 years. So met him at a restaurant we had, and kind of became friends. And he kind of enticed me to come work for him. And 26 later, here we are. So it's been quite a journey. It's been awesome to see the growth of the company through many different divisions. I also am a father of 3 boys, and all different than Ben. I didn't have the affinity for the Marine, but I definitely grew to love that part of it. And when I first came to work with Rick, I was selling more of the otter and beaver tail items, from those LLCs. And then we got to that point to where each one of those LLCs got to be big enough that he said, well, I think we should have a brand manager for each one.
So talk to me a little bit about, kind of, you say these LLCs. What does that mean for our audience that's watching, and kind of what that looks like?
So Rick started the business Rhino rotational molding, right?
Sure.
So it's just basically a custom roto molding shop that we did a lot of different products for other companies. but he had the ice fishing sleds and all that. So that was called Otter Outdoors. So that was one company there, but everything fell underneath Rhino. But when we started to see, and Rick started to see that, hey, Otter can stand on its own, and I'd like to get in the beaver tail, the hunting products. It's like, well, let's create an LLC for that. And then came along Wave Armor. And it's like, well, let's create another LLC there for Wave Armor. So all these LLCs would fall underneath the Rhino rotational molding umbrella, Rhino Inc., so to speak.
So when you think of those brands, Steve, those that you shared with us, Wave Armor is truly the brand that has kind of originated within the mind of Rick, right?
Oh, yeah,
the
that's
other
his
brands,
passion.
just
That's
to
his
kind of give
passion,
us a
yeah.
little bit more, the other brands were something that was established that were acquired, right? With Wave Armor being truly something that was developed by Rick.
It was, and I think where the motivation or the whatever the idea came is that we were rotational molding a couple of competitors' ports, and he saw that they didn't have much design, right? They didn't have the pizzazz. They didn't have rollers. They lacked innovation. And he thought, well, we can do this much better. So I think that's the impetus to get him into saying, hey, let's go on to Wave Armor and we can create something much bigger and much better. And today we have that. I mean, I think we do lead the market in innovation.
I would agree with that
yeah.
statement. There's a saying here internally: we will never apologize for innovation,
Yeah,
right?
true.
And to that point, that is definitely the fabric of our DNA and of the
Correct.
company, is constantly trying to figure out how we can innovate and really bring products to the market that enhance that
Right.
shore,
Yeah,
that
your
living beyond the
experience.
shoreline, right?
Exactly.
So,
Yep.
one thing that you touched on was this roto molding. Can you kind of walk me through what even roto molding looks
Sure.
like and what
Sure.
that?
Yeah, so rotomolding, it's basically a powder of polyethylene. It's just like a powder, like a powdered sugar or flour, right? So it starts with that process, and it goes into a molds that are, a top mold and a bottom mold, two-piece mold that clamp together, and they go in this gigantic oven on this spider arm that rotates both. Spins around centrically, whatever, and then it rotates two different directionally, I guess, is what it does in this hot oven. But the whole process of rotational molding actually basically starts with, like Rick's idea of a concept of an idea of a product, right?
Yep.
And then it goes to the design team where the designers lay it out in a CAD file, whatever. And the most interesting, exciting part of it, from that standpoint, the journey to watch it go through to our metal shop, and we have CNC machines there that cut all these tools. So they're CC cut to precision. And to go to see that part, Ben, to where we were before when I first started, and we were fabricating and bending and welding all these tools, it's amazing to see where we are now and to see the quality of the tools come out. They're second to none. And to watch that maturation and that journey to go from, the tooling, then back to the rotational molding side of things, and watch them being molded there, and the guys trimming and cleaning them up and then steaming them, and out the door they go, and then seeing them on the water. It's remarkable.
Yeah, it's
It's
pretty exciting, actually, when you get to see people kind of
It
live out
is.
their dreams on the water, right?
Yeah,
And it all
it is.
started, obviously with some inspiration on Rick's part, and then to see kind of how it kind of works through our food chain. And a couple things I just want to go back and touch on that whole rotomolding process. Maybe another visual to help, both our dealers and our customers is that think of that rotisserie chicken, right?
Yep.
And how that chicken's kind of rotisserie
Yep.
on the grill, right?
Yep.
The same thing is happening when this product is built, to kind of how
Yep.
you mentioned, right? Essentially, it's on this rotisserie,
Yep.
and this powder's put in a mold, and it continues to go through this
Correct.
oven and heat up, and then it reverses and kind of goes through. So it
Couple
really
different
takes
ways,
that
yep.
that powder to a liquid to a solid, right?
Right.
Essentially, is kind of
Right.
what's happening in that process.
Right.
So one thing I want to spend a little bit more time on, as you mentioned, is art, which
right.
we refer to here. But obviously, it's our American Rotomolding Tools, which is a separate entity from Wave Armor, and Rhino, but nonetheless is still owned by the Johannick family. And really, I think it's one of the key things that really differentiates us. If you think about manufacturing, there's a lot of desire to be vertically integrated.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it starts really right there. And that's our differentiator. If we want something done or changed, it really can happen in a matter of minutes. Or
The turnaround
hours.
time is phenomenal. Yeah, we can really react and bring new products to market. I would say faster than probably any other company out there, competitor or just, somebody in the similar business. We can really, really bring the tools to market in a hurry.
Yeah, and what Steve mentioned, what they do is the speed. but also, it's all CNC based, right? So
Correct.
again, you talk about the precision and the quality of tools. Um, it's second to none when we look at some of that stuff. And like I said earlier, is it turns from a block of aluminum,
Yeah,
essentially, is what
billet
it
of
is, right?
aluminum.
A
Yeah,
billet
yeah,
of
billet of
aluminum.
aluminum. Yeah,
The CNCs remove material until we have a mold, and then
right,
from that point, it goes into the stage where we're gonna put it back on the rotisserie, right, and then add the powder and kind of make
right.
some products. So it's super cool from that standpoint. Also, speaking a little bit more about art, just a personal experience, and I think it really means something to both our dealers and our customers. And that is, examples of how we've been able to see them kind of shine, right,
Mm-hmm.
in regards to a need. And there's this one recently in the top of my mind where we actually have done a commercial install, or one of our dealers has done a commercial install in Wisconsin, and they needed some custom made 60-inch gangways, right?
Right.
And that
Yeah.
was Thursday of last week that we were having those conversations. And by Tuesday evening, yesterday, um, they were already
They're
built.
up. Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
already built. So you think about
It's a good
companies that
example.
have that vertical integration and really the ability to kind of pivot on a
Right.
dime and really supply a premium product is really cool to see. Um, so you talked a little bit about the other brands. So
Right.
Otter,
Yes.
for our people down south, what is
Probably
this?
don't
What
know
is this
about
thing,
that.
ice
Yeah,
fishing
yeah,
that you talk
right.
about?
Probably don't know too much about that. But that was the backbone of our company to begin
Yeah.
with. That's what got us on the map. It's, you would be surprised or amazed how many sleds we sell. Just the toboggan, snowmobiles, ATVs. Heck, they even use them for farming to go, bring calves in from when they're born out in the field. So there's so many multi-uses for the sleds. But that was how Rick got it started, was there. And then from there, built a fish house on it and expanded that market into other areas. So,
And one of the things, just so everyone that's watching, is trying to get Rick on here in one of these future podcasts. So that
yeah.
would be a fun one too when we get him to that point. But um, so let's talk a little bit about Wave Armor, really why
Okay.
we're here and kind of why we started this podcast. So talk to me a little bit about kind of the product portfolio and
Sure.
kind of maybe this is kind of the journey too of
Sure.
where it started
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
kind of what has been added over the time and what the
Sure.
lineup looks like today.
Okay. So, like I mentioned before, it started with Rick's idea that we could make things better from based on some of the other competitors or whatever we were making custom for, like the PWC ports. So, but before that, the journey really started with the swim rafts. We were making a swim raft called the Otter Island, most popular raft out there, right? You know it,
See him everywhere.
backrest, see them
Yep.
everywhere. Yeah, great item. So it started with there, and we basically had a couple of benches, a 4-foot bench, a 6-foot bench, and a couple of kayaks, and that was our marine line, right? Wow, what an impressive marine line. So at that point, when Rick started to say, okay, hey, we can make our own dock, we can make a port better than what we're seeing out there. That's where it started, and that was 2008, believe it or not. And started with a dock and a couple PWC ports and a couple accessories to go with the dock, a ramp and stuff you need, right? The H beams, connectors, and that. And it started there. And then from that point on, it was just the evolution and the journey of adding more products to the dock line, adding boat ports to that, changing them. We found out a few different things on some ports that necessarily didn't work, and then how we could make them better. I think I'm very proud that we are the first one to probably introduce adjustable rollers, a 6-foot wide port that nobody else had. So those really are benchmarks to go back to, tie into again innovation, right? Where we really lead the industry there. Now, when you look back at it and I see out in the marketplace, I see people that they're copying, stuff like we're making. So it's awfully flattering to know that, hey, we're
Absolutely.
leading, right? So I don't take it as a negative always. It's like, hey, we're leading. They're seeing something and they're copying some of the things that we're doing. So,
So
but
so that being said, do you have a favorite product?
I kind of do. I think, in the most part, I think it's the dock. It just as simple
Funny.
as it is. You might think something like the port or something like this, but I think it's the dock. And the reason I say that is for a couple of things is that, I mean, you look at other docks out there and you might see like a cube design or you might see just a block design. And then you look at our flagstone paver texture, whatever, it's second to none, right? It just looks so beautiful, so elegant that there's nothing out there that looks like that. And then you couple that with our patented H-beam system, and where all the connections go around the perimeter of the dock, and you can put anything in there, and it's off the dock, and it's hidden connections to connect the docks together. It's truly a remarkable, innovation, and an attachment system. And then having it just be two piece, where you got the nice decorative color top Pebble Beach and a black float that kind of hides that staining. I think there
Absolutely.
again, people might think that, different, might not put a lot of value in that until they see a one piece stained dock,
Absolutely. When
Yeah.
it came time for me to make that decision, that was
Right.
a key piece as well. And it's funny because, as we were kind of, this is obviously not rehearsed, but as we were
Yeah.
kind of going through an agenda on things that we wanted to talk about, I put that question down and I started thinking myself too,
Yeah.
like what's one of my favorite pieces? And I ended up the same spot you
You
did.
do really?
Yeah,
That's why you
So
chuckled? I was
yeah,
wondering why you did. You
yeah, I
chuckled. I
chuckled.
wasn't
Yeah,
sure. It's like, wait a minute, was that a
yeah.
bad answer?
No, no, and
No?
I went right to Doc as
Okay.
well
Yeah,
because
it
it's
is. It's
just
just,
like I think it's really, it's the razor blade,
yeah,
right?
right.
Sometimes, the dock is really the razor
Hmm.
of our ecosystem, if you want to
Right.
call it
It
that, right?
is.
And everything else can connect to that. It doesn't
Yeah,
need to connect to that, but that's really the heart of living beyond the shoreline for my
it
family, right?
is.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
But most families, I agree.
And then it
Yes.
gives it an
Yes.
access to, obviously the PWCs with the
Hmm.
ports and storage and those types of things. And we'll get into all the various products in future episodes. Um, but that's really kind of what it
Hmm.
was for me. And I would say that it's probably not the shiny penny,
No,
if that
no,
makes
it's not.
sense.
Yeah, it's a dock,
But it's a dock.
it's a
But
dock, but it's a beautiful dock.
it's a
Yeah.
beautiful dock.
Yeah.
And one thing that you didn't share that is a key piece to me is just just how it's modular in design,
Yeah.
right? And you can shape it and grow it as your needs change. And I can tell you from living on the waterfront, I think I've had 8 PWCs in the last 5 years. I've had boats and pontoons, and your needs truly do change,
Sure they
right?
do. Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm seeing that now in this next phase as we're empty nesters, right? And all of a sudden, entertaining becomes a larger part of Michelle, my wife, and I's weekend, right? So
Right.
having that modular space and having a platform where we can invite
Sure.
friends and family over to really um,
Right.
celebrate and
Right.
and enjoy everything that the lake life has to offer is super cool.
I think one other thing, Ben, just to throw it in there, is we kind of don't say it enough, is the stability of a floating dock,
Yeah, it's function.
people think that floating, it's all over. It's not that. It's so not true with the wave warmer dock, right? Because you experience it with your dock. It's so stable that people are amazed. It's like, am I really on a floating dock? And you hear it all the time. So I think that's a big thing, right? I mean, you
And
enjoy that just because of stability too.
and it is. And I'll give a
Yeah.
little teaser
Right.
kind of to that point. And one thing that I always try to explain is like, why is this floating dock so stable, right? One is we've got that foam filled base in the black
Yeah.
that you talk about that gives us a little bit more rigidity and weight and kind of creates it, that hovering on the
Water.
water.
Yep.
You couple that with, the suction cups, I'm going to
The
call it
design.
that
Yeah.
for the design of our float. And really, if you go back to that high school class of science, when you were a kid and you took that red solo
Yep.
cup and you
Put
dipped it
in. Yep.
underwater, right? And as you pulled that to the surface, you would get more resistance, right?
I use that a lot in the zone. You have to go like, because
Yeah,
you have to use
oh,
that.
yeah,
You
you
got
gotta
to
use
make sure you add that
it.
because
Yeah,
that suction.
I will use that one in the future. Yeah, for sure.
Sure, but yeah.
But yeah, that's exactly it, and that's exactly what happens with that dock and the
Yep.
way that that has been designed and tested. We continue to look at wider widths as well,
Hmm.
and we've got an 80 by 120 that
Yeah.
we launched last year and a 100 by 80 this year. And the first time I walked on the 80 by 120 was at our dealer meeting last year, and I was really
Blown
shocked.
away. Yeah.
I
Blown
was
away.
blown away by how
Yeah.
stable it was, and we tried to sink it, and we were
Oh yeah.
unsuccessful.
Yeah. People, the dealers thought that they were on ground. It's like,
Yeah,
this isn't on the water. Yes,
yeah,
it is. Yeah. Very
absolutely.
cool.
So we're talking a lot about dock, and we view dock as a little bit differently in the Midwest
Hmm.
than maybe some of our southern partners, dealers, and customers would view it. So when they say dock, it's a little bit different, you know,
Right.
item, right?
It
Essentially,
is.
it's do you want to explain maybe some of the differences by
Uh,
region and kind of what you've seen?
Sure.
And
Well, I mean, down south, I mean, a lot of it is reservoirs, right? And they have permitting square footage, and you have to go out, a lot of times huge gangways to get out to a floating platform. And a lot of times they just call it a boathouse, right? And it's docking around a boathouse with a roof over the top with a slip, and they put their boat board in there. So a lot of it down in the Carolinas and the Virginias, and all, a lot of that area is Georgia, Alabama, are all these types of, big, heavy, structures that are, within the spec of whatever the Army Corps, whatever the Lake Association has. And there's boathouses and platforms with a huge gangway going out. Ours doesn't necessarily fit that mold. But up here, of course, we definitely have been making good big strides on floating. But one thing I'm really proud of, I think, and what I've seen change been over the years, is that floating to me has always been people, the connotation of it is that, hey, it's for the rivers, it's for tidal waters, it's for fluctuating waters, right? And I think we've been able to change that over the years to where it's more acceptable, and we're seeing more people buying for any types of water. It doesn't have to be tidal waters. It doesn't have to be the muddy conditions. And to me, that's one of the things when you say, what's your favorite product? It's dock there too, because it has so many different facets to it that I love the fact that we're changing how people feel about floating dock as we speak today. I mean, it's people, we were seeing them in freshwater lakes that you typically never saw before, and they're loving
I
them
would
because of
agree.
your modularity, like the
Yeah.
life experiences
Y-
you have.
Yeah, and I think that kind of goes back into the evolution of dock,
Yeah.
and we talk a lot about that, right? And dock, if you think about it, probably started out as something in wood,
Mm.
moved from steel, then to
Yeah.
aluminum, and I'd say we're just on the beginning fringe of the high density
Hmm.
polyethylene, right? So
Right.
we're
Yeah.
really on that evolution of the dock, and we're on really
Right.
on that tip of that spear, if you want to call it that, relative to what
Hmm.
consumers would look like. And it's a good spot for wave armor to be,
Absolutely.
especially with the product that we have. And we're continuing to see that every year. And I
Right.
think as people become more familiar with it across different parts of the country, right?
Some
I
are
mean,
slower than others, right? I
and
mean, yep.
even in that
They def-
structure that you
yeah.
talked about,
Right.
right? Well, there's a lot of wave armor products that can go into that
Hmm.
structure, whether it be a port,
Right. Yeah, for sure.
um,
In that slip
or
space, yes. Yep.
that, or even
Yep.
some dock to give it, push everything back out a little further and have a platform where you
Yep.
connect your PWC
Hmm.
ports to. So there's 100 different ways to use our products
Yes.
across the country,
Yeah.
right? And
Yep.
that's what's so awesome. Another thing with dock is, the way that we view dock here in the Midwest is no two people are going to build a dock alike.
No, not usually.
And
No,
it's
right.
funny because here I am 2 years in building out different docks, and I've put it in front of you in your eyes, and you have a different perspective than if I put it in front of somebody else.
Absolutely.
You know what I
Some
mean? So
needs are that one
there's no
party.
right or
Yeah.
wrong,
No,
really. I
no,
mean, so it's
no.
really so customizable.
That's why it's so unique too, and so
Yeah,
popular. So you can cater it to whatever your needs are. Straight dock party platform. You want to live out there,
sure.
entertain. Yeah.
Sure. And I think the other thing too is, we're using terminology that represents, our brand. So we talk about a port, we talk about um, dock, we talk about all these different things. There's a lot of different uh, ways to say that, right? A PWC dock
Mm-hmm.
was
Right.
what
Well,
we would
sure.
consider
Yeah.
you a port, right? Or a
Right.
PWC lift, right?
Right.
How do we ever land a plane on port? Why do we call it ports?
I think when we first made one, the guy that introduced it was, sport part. It was port. I think that it just kind of stuck with people, and everybody from that point on it was a port, PWC port. But you go overseas and they're jetties, So I don't
Yeah.
know. That confuses me all over.
Jet ski dock.
Yeah,
I mean,
jetty.
there's
It's a
all
jetty.
kinds of
Yeah.
stories. You all
Oh,
are
yeah.
right. You
Yeah.
all are
Yeah.
100% right.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Well,
we appreciate it,
yeah.
but we have some nomenclatures here too that we try to stick to, and
Yes.
and kind of talk about that. So considerations for a new dock. I mean, we're not going to get too far into the H beams and kind of all that other stuff today,
Mhm.
but we'll come back to that. And sometime I'm sure we'll come back to some of these other pieces. What do you think are some of the considerations when you look at the various dock offers that are out there?
What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, like, so for instance, we talked about the evolution, wood, steel,
Yeah.
aluminum,
Yeah.
HDPE. You talked a little bit about how, you're seeing this evolution in the freshwater with
Hmm.
our products. So there's a consideration path, right? When you start to buy that dock, what are those considerations that somebody,
Customers maybe have to go
yeah,
through.
yeah,
So, okay. So I guess, yeah, if I'm thinking about it, when you look at our dock and let's compare our dock to just what's out there, whatever, it might be slightly higher than other docks, and you got to look at maybe the construction of it, right? I mean, we're a two-piece dock. We have a top and a bottom, and in ours is foam filled. So if you're looking at pricing out a dock, you might think, well, compared to wood or compared to aluminum or even a competitive poly dock, we might be slightly higher. But yet, if you look at it under a couple different, when people come to a boat show and say, hey, it's like price this out, and they go, whoa, that's more than I thought it was, or that's more than X dock over here, whatever it is, right? It's like I try to give them an analogy to say, to think about it, to get their mind, off of the price and say, well, if you were going to go, and buy this dock and it's X amount, and you go to a restaurant, let's say you have a steak here, brand steak that may be $38, but yeah, you have the $90 steak, and you have that $90 steak, and it's awesome, right? But it's like, God, how can you justify this? Every day, if you had a steak like that, it'd be crazy. But let's say you do that in that one time you bought that steak, and you could have that steak taste that awesome for the next 20 to 30 years. Is it that much? And then you put them in that mindset and it's like, hey, there's an opportunity now. And then they can go and say, hey, they love the dock because everybody loves the dock, right? They love everything about the dock. So considerations typically might be a price, whatever. Well, you look at that, it's, you're getting a premium product. And the other thing is you don't have to go big right away, right? You can do it. You can always add on. And we talk about that all the time. You buy a couple, 3, 4, whatever within your budget the first year and add on every, a couple times you add on a couple
It's
years
the
later.
gift that keeps on giving.
It does,
Yeah,
so
it
have the
truly
kids
is.
buy it for you, whatever. But
Yeah, hey,
but
it's the
yeah,
anniversary.
so
Hey, I'm gonna have
yeah,
to take the note and use my kids.
yeah, there you go. Yeah, put that in their stocking. We'll know it.
Yeah,
But
what I want for my birthday. Yeah, exactly. I think the other thing too is really sustainability, right?
yeah,
And we talk about the wood, we talk about the steel, and some of those other products. When you think about the wave armor dock, the sustainability of it, you're not going to have that maintenance.
no,
It's really, you talked about that 20, 30 year,
23. Yeah,
20, 30 year
think
dock.
about that value over
It's
that long.
it's
Yeah,
all of that,
all
right?
of that,
It's all
and
of
probably
that.
longer.
It's right.
Yeah,
So again, it's I don't know if you want to call it future proof or whatever that terminology is for each customer here. So probably gonna be a little bit different, but it's buy it once and be done,
yeah.
right?
Your
And
investment
then
doesn't look so bad then, does it?
it
No,
doesn't.
it
It
doesn't.
truly
No,
doesn't.
it really doesn't. No.
And I just went through that. Obviously, I
Yeah,
had
you
a
did.
dock before this one, right? So there's a cost to switch your docks as your needs
Yeah,
change too,
right,
right? You know what I mean?
right.
So it's
Yeah,
like bite that that initial cost is going to
sure.
be significantly different over the longevity of that
Hmm.
product. And that's, I think people got to take a look at that. The other key piece, I think, in consideration is if you have any questions about a floating dock and really the state, how stable it is,
Right.
we need to figure out a way to get you on a dock.
Absolutely.
And I
Yeah.
know we've got great dealers out there that have some installs that we can refer customers to, where we, being on the sales side of Wave Armor, are looking at ways to support our dealers to kind of seed the market, if you want to call it that,
Hmm.
right?
Yep.
And really give customers the opportunity
Right.
to really walk and walk on the dock. And I'll go back to my install again, just relating this back to other people so they can relate. Is we have family on the same lake as ourselves, and the staining came up,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
I don't know
Yep.
about
For
it's going to
sure.
stain, and then the stability came up, right?
Right.
Within in part of our team was there, they can attest to this, but our family came onto our dock and it was sitting on the ice at the time, and they're like, "Oh my God, Ben, I think you just cost me some money." Right?
Yeah.
Because he
Right.
knew as soon as his wife saw
Sure.
that, he's like, "I'm going to be getting
Were
rid
they
of
out?
it."
Were they on the dock? Did they come
They
on
have
the
been
dock?
on the dock.
Right.
They have been
Yeah.
on the dock now.
Yeah. Okay.
And I just helped them put their dock in last weekend. It's not a floating dock.
Sure.
And the whole time the conversation was, I don't want to do this the rest of my life. I don't want to keep doing this. I'm, mid 50s. I don't want to keep doing this.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's definitely real, right?
It
Where
is.
people walk on
It
it and they
is.
see how convenient it is. I no longer have to pull my dock out.
Yeah.
And
When they watch you throughout the summer, it's going to be harder and harder for them
Oh, yeah,
not to
it's
go.
gonna- it's
They're
gonna
going to
be-
say, yeah,
yeah.
for sure.
Any war stories, Steve, that you've had over the course of your tenure here?
Oh, yeah, you can imagine. How much time do we have? No.
I know you have some.
Actually, I do have one story, and it kind of it's pertinent because it actually involves another long-term employee, and then it involves our owner Rick. So it's all three of us, right?
Sure.
So it's Rick, Kevin and myself are traveling and taking a brand new trailer, this Featherlight, 24-foot Featherlight, Rick bought, whatever. And we're going over to like a Ducks Unlimited festival in Wisconsin, right? And we're driving Rick's truck, his personal truck, right? And we're driving and we're heading east and the sun's setting in the west, right? And it's glaring, heading, shining the other way. And it's almost like just blinding when cars in front of us, right? So we're driving on this highway. And all of a sudden, this car stops or truck stops in front of us, and you can't see the brake lights because the sun's shining on it so bright. So we're gonna nail this thing, right? Rick's truck, brand new trailer, and I go to Kevin, take the ditch. He takes the ditch, and bam, we knock this mailbox over. And the next thing you know, it's like we get out the truck. and the truck's sitting like this. We bent the frame. We look at the trailer, brand new trailer, right? Look at trailer. There's an ATV trailer in the trailer, and the hitch is hanging up through the roof of the trailer. And we're going, oh my God, how are we going to tell Rick this? It's brand new trailer, and his truck is sitting like this. It's like, so we call Rick, and he was not happy. He was mad. He's like that, and just get, blah blah blah. And it's like next thing you know, like minute passes. Calls us back up. By the way, are you guys all right? Yeah, we're fine. Rick. But not to mention our hearts were in our throat, whatever, and that. But yeah, that was a close call. But we're all fortunate nobody got hurt. We only destroyed
for sure. So, a lot of cool things. I guess before we call it, Steve, is there anything else that you can think of relative to
kind
of the series and kind of some thoughts you have as far as how we can bring value to both the end users watching as well as our dealers?
The only thing I guess I would say is just from just having the longevity that I've had here, I'm awful proud to be part of it, excited to be part of it. And when you think about if you think about what's a mature business, and I think it's defined as a company that is well respected in the industry, one that has well-known products, and one that has a loyal following. And I think we have all that.
Yeah, I'd agree.
And I think we were a very mature, and it's fun to watch the maturation from that, from a startup to watch the growth to where we become mature. It's the evolution part of it. And it's just been a joy, and I'm so glad to be part of it.
All right, Steve, thanks for all your tenure. It's truly a pleasure to have you part of the team, and, I continue to learn from you, and you're really the encyclopedia of wave armor, right? I mean, every time there's a legacy product and we have a question,
this is
the guy we go to.
That's where the goat came from. He he doesn't know anything in the future. He's got all this stuff in the back.
That's not true. That's
no,
not
I
true
know.
at all.
I know.
But we're happy. I'm happy to have you part of the team.
Yeah, thank you, and I'm happy to have you join us as well, and Leah and the marketing team. It's just
there's a lot of wind in our sail.
A lot of wind in the sail.
Yeah,
well put.
And hopefully you guys can see that firsthand as well. And stay tuned. The next episode is we're going to focus in on one of those products, the PWC, and I'm going to bring another guest in, Mike Jacobson, which is our technical specialist, and we'll talk a little bit more about product specific type conversations, wheel setup, and those types of things. And I know there's always an ask and a need for that product,
right?
But we just wanted to set the stage today of kind of what we're going to do through this series, and obviously bring forward the company, and all your knowledge, Steve, in that space has been very, very helpful. So thank you. And with that, you may live by the water, but you live on the water.
Amen.